This is the Terry and Jesse Show. We're two evangelical Catholics, speaking of hope to a hurting world. Today we're talking about suicide, and we're talking about the devastation that we see in our society. I'm looking at one article here. It says, disabled wife and her devastated husband kill themselves in front of speeding train after last apologetic call to their son. Talks about Earl and Mary Hyatt, both 59 years old, that have been married for 42 years. They jumped to their deaths on Sunday before a train, and they called their son right before they did that. Looking at another article over here, it says, Fort Hood, it mirrors violence in society. And the long and the short of it, it's basically talking about the violence that's occurring within the armed forces, within the troops. In other words, senseless acts of violence. For example, U.S. Army Specialist Ivan Lopez, from a Puerto Rican background, who went and shot 13 people. And then we also have the Fort Hood psychiatrist, Malik Hassan, who shouted Allah Akbar before he went to shoot over a dozen people himself. And so this is what we want to examine. We want to put the spotlight on this. This is where Catholicism and culture meet. We've got a couple of real exciting guests here today, too.
We absolutely do. And I would like at this time to introduce to our audience Luke Maxwell. Luke is 17 years old and actually had an attempt on suicide. And now he has a great story of how he's found meaning and purpose in his life. Luke Maxwell, welcome to the Jesse and Terry Show.
Good morning, good afternoon to you all.
Yes,
it's
Luke.
a pleasure to be on here.
Thank you for taking the time to join us. I want to get right to it, Luke. You're 17 years old today. Can you tell our audience your story of how you attempted suicide when I think you had just turned 16? Can you share with us what happened?
Yes. I began to be slowly depressed around the age of 12. I didn't realize what I was going through. I never really been exposed to depression, mental illness. It really holds a big stigma in our culture today, and no one ever really talked about it to me, so I didn't know what I was going through. I thought I was just being a teenager, going through the normal things that a teenager goes through. So first, I went down slowly into this darkness. First, I started keeping secrets from my family, and those secrets turned into lying all the time, just completely avoiding them. I had a real disconnect with the family, which I find is a very big sign of depression that I know now. Yeah. I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, even though my family was always with me at camps or retreats. I just kind of went down because I couldn't really feel any love anyone was giving me, and I really felt that pain. I felt that no one loved me. I felt that everyone hated me. I avoided, people that actually did care about me because they weren't cool enough, right? Mm-hmm. And so one day, 4 years later, I'm 16, I've been going through this for 4 years. I was so done. And so I went out to clean our big 12-seater van, and I took the keys. I took the car out. I'd only been driving about twice with my permit. I didn't even have my license yet. I took the car out about half a mile down, and then I barreled through a stop sign, didn't stop. I sighted another car coming on the other direction, and I accelerated to about 60 miles per hour. I closed my eyes, and I really don't remember much of what happened after that. We collided, astounding force. We rolled into midair to the side of the road several times. Then I vaguely remember climbing out of a broken window, running down the road in shock. And after that, I was still kind of in shock, and I was really upset because I wanted to die. I didn't think I deserved to live. I thought I was guilty for everything that I had done. And basically, I just wanted to end it. And so I was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon. And then after that, I went to a mental holding facility for 3 days, and after that, my parents took me home, and basically we tried to deal with everything that was going on. And my parents and my family have been so supportive, and my friends and everybody have just shown me so much love in this.
Luke, did you ever go to confession after that visit into the hospital? I mean, did you Can you tell us a little bit about what brought you out of this depression?
Yes, I had been, I couldn't feel any love when I was depressed. And so I didn't feel God. I didn't believe in anything. I had all sorts of wacky ideas on everything. I wasn't thinking clear. My perception was shifted because of the disease, the genetic disease that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And so about 2 weeks afterwards, I really felt the need to go to confession. My parents have been asking me because, I did a lot of bad things, and I told them. And so I was really scared, really nervous. I didn't want to go, and then finally 2 weeks later, I went with a priest who happened to be near us, and who was a real angel in disguise because he kind of disappeared a few weeks after that, and so we think, oh, maybe it was my guardian angel.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I went to confession there. It took 10 minutes, which is astounding amount of time for me. Because, before my parents would make me go to confession, I say my list that I had written down of my 3 things,
Sure.
And so that was my first confession, real confession in 4 years. And that was an absolutely amazing experience. I really experienced God's love and forgiveness then.
Yep.
And that was a turning point of my changing. The next turning point where I just fell headlong, in love with God and God's plan was actually at a healing mass that my parents took me to. Our whole family went, and it was actually kind of scary because at the prayers of the faithful, the priest said, there's people here who are suffering with, bone cancer, and he started listing off diseases, and one of them was depression. And right then I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. We lined up for the healing.
Sure.
He pressed the wood of the cross on my head, and I passed out.
Wow.
And right then I got a headache. My head was pounding. I really don't remember what was happening afterward, but I felt the Holy Spirit rush through me then. And then that led to my organization to help others. Of course, with my healing and my other
Luke, what an incredible story. Let me mention 2 things that I just want to highlight. Number one, there's actually documentation, academic documentation that says that practicing Catholics in the United States have the lowest suicide rate. My wife, who's in one of her registered nursing books, she showed me that several years ago, and I highlighted it. And I asked her, did you ask the professor why they would say this? She said the professor says the reason practicing Catholics have a lower suicide as compared to any other religion in the U.S. is because sacraments have the advantage of this thing called the sacrament of confession, where they're able to talk to a priest and get all that unresolved, junk out of their soul. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is this, and I'm glad you're bringing it up. You're a 17-year-old young Catholic Christian. I think as Catholics, we forget the power of the Holy Spirit. The third person of the Trinity is almost forgotten in many Catholic circles. And one of the things that I believe that in these healing masses and the charismatic renewal that they emphasize quite appropriately is the power of the Holy Spirit. That same Holy Spirit that filled the apostles and the Blessed Mother with power at Pentecost is that same Holy Spirit at work today that heals us, sets us free from addictions and the enslavement to disordered passions. And you're a living example as a 17-year-old kid that the Holy Spirit is alive and well, and when you invoke His name and believe in Him, miracles happen even today.
Well said.
Yes.
Luke, let me ask you another...
It was truly a miracle I survived. I had actually, after I got CAT scanned, and I only had a scratch on my wrist. That was my only injury.
That's amazing.
Yes,
Luke,
it was a miracle.
I chatted with you off the air, and I was very impressed with what you said. At age 17, that you recently read a book by Archbishop Sheen, and just to let the people know, I'm giving away his Philosophy of Life CD, everyone, and this is a great CD to lift people up. You can get the CD by calling 877-526-2151. But I just wanted to ask, what does Bishop Sheen have to do with your healing? Is there a book that you read that touched you?
Yes, I read. I've been receiving spiritual direction from an amazing priest who's been in my life, and he gave me the Life of Christ.
Wow!
And boy, was I excited! I love big books. I've always been an avid reader, and his philosophy, his way of explaining things, and his way of portraying the life of Christ really brought to me and everything that I've been reading about the spiritual life has really been inspiring me to imitate Christ as much as possible. And that book especially, not brought it down to a level, but showed me, like in very plain language and very simple yet very deep meaning on how to imitate Christ and how to reach out to others and how to basically live out the virtue that he perfectly lived out. And he is an amazing writer. He is an amazing person. And I am a fan of anything that is Fulton Sheen.
Well, I have to tell you, Luke, I am too. I went to Fulton Sheen's funeral 30-some years ago, and his cause is, as you know, up for canonization. And I've been promoting him, and I want to promote him again. Folks, take advantage of my offer. Get Bishop Sheen's Philosophy of Life. Just call 877-526-2151. That's 877-526-2151. While we're asking these questions, if you are on the air listening and you want to ask a question to Luke Maxwell, 17-year-old boy who has had an experience of wanting to commit suicide, now he's on the other side trying to help people. Luke, what is your website that can help people with this topic of suicide?
My website is youcan'tbeerased.com.
It's one more time.
Spelled with the U, the letter U, can't, the letter B, erased.com.
Luke, this is Jesse. I have one more question to ask you. Do you believe that a lot of young people, the millennial generation, do you believe that the reason teenage suicide has spiked in the last 40, 50 years, do you believe it's because of a lot of the anti-life philosophy? For example, through music, I'm looking here at Metallica. They have a song called Fade to Black. Look at what it says. It says, life, it seems, will fade away, drifting further every day. Getting lost within myself, nothing matters, no one else. I have lost the will to live, simply nothing more to give. There is nothing more for me, need the end to set me free. The anti-life philosophy, I think in your generation also, coupled with the easily available contraception, abortion, the progressive, mindset about unlimited freedom. Do you think the fact that oftentimes in your generation they just want to throw off all moral restraints and strictures, and they believe that religious teachings are outmoded? Do you believe that part of the challenge of the millennial generation is the anti-life philosophy that we find in the culture, contraception, abortion, the music? Am I onto something?
Yes, I definitely agree with you. I say the music that teens listen to is absolute junk, and if there's any teens out there, I'm sorry, I have to speak the truth. Because I used to listen to that when I was depressed, and that just made me worse, I tell you. And definitely, because this culture tells us that, if someone doesn't like your status on Facebook, then they hate you and you're worthless. And if you don't, if you're not friends with this person, then you might as well kill yourself because you're not important. And the culture that we live in is very anti-life. There's just abortion. I actually found this study that says sexually active teenagers are more likely to commit suicide. And I really find that true because we think, these people, you're trying to find love. If you're depressed, you can't feel love, and you're trying to find love in any way possible. And so people turn to drugs, alcohol, sex, because they think, this makes me happy. This person loves me. Look what they're doing. And so this false sense of love and this false sense of attachment. I recently wrote a blog post about how we call these stars, these movie stars, idols. And we worship them. And you think, this terminology of an idol really would trigger something in people's brains, saying, we're worshiping these people, and we're following these people's lives who are absolutely a mess. And these people are killing themselves. These people are, getting drunk and getting arrested. Yes. And this is what teens are brought into. This is the culture that we're brought into.
You're right, Luke. I just read recently that about 500 actors and professional athletes in the last 50 years have committed suicide. I'm going to repeat that number. About 500 actors and professional athletes in the last 50 years have committed suicide. Let me ask you another question. Do you believe your generation, the millennial generation, do you believe that one of the reasons a lot of them are the teenage suicide has, again, spiked in your generation because your generation has been told stuff like, bad is good and good is bad, and your generation has been given moral relativism, situation ethics, which basically holds that any behavior may be justified in certain circumstances. Your generation also has grown up without the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments were taken out by the U.S. Supreme Court in all government schools in 1980. Is that part of the challenge in your generation, the reason there's so much confusion, moral relativism, and again, the Ten Commandments being thrown out the window?
Yes, I definitely agree with that. I heard a talk from somebody saying, just imagine if everyone lived by the Ten Commandments. Imagine what our society would live like. And such a simple rule, 10 rules you could live by, and how much better our society would be. And people think they're free from rules. That makes them free. And I asked them, what is freedom? I mean, how do you define that? Do you define that by not having any rules? Is that truly freedom? Are you happy without any rules? And relativism basically says, yeah, our schools, our teachers are telling these kids that they're growing up. I mean, starting, let's say, they're at kindergarten at 5, and these teachers are telling them all the way up through high school, all the way up through college, that anything they do, anything they feel is right, is right. If you feel like a girl and you're a boy, then okay, fine, call you a girl. And this is really messing up our brains.
You got that right. Well, you're listening to the Jesse and Terry Show. We are interviewing Luke Maxwell, a 17-year-old young man. He's speaking the truth in charity. Boy, I'm just going, yeah, let him have some more airtime here. This is fantastic. Luke, I just want to mention, I want to get your feedback. I teach a class to the lighthouse reps across the country on Thursday mornings, and when I told everybody what I was going to talk about, I asked for their prayers, and I got an email from one of our lighthouse reps. She said, 8 years ago, my brother lost all hope and attempted to commit suicide by stepping out on Highway 94 in Chicago to oncoming traffic. He was not successful, but he's in a rest home for 8 years because of the damage that was caused to his body. She said it's a very painful story. My pastor today is having a mass offered for Michael. That's his name, so we'll pray for him. So she said, I just want to ask you to pray for him. And she said, my family grew up with no faith, no knowledge of God, and she had a major conversion to her Catholic faith. She said, I just understood the love that God has for me. I just wish my brother could have received that. And so she says it makes her so motivated to go out and tell people about Jesus because of her upbringing without Jesus. And I just want to ask you the question, is that a common response from the siblings when they have a relative who's tried to commit suicide and their heart goes out to them and they just are just so, I want to say, disappointed to a point where it does affect them also that their brother or sister has, committed suicide. What advice would you give a family like that?
Oh, it's always hard because obviously you feel so sad for the person if they did, so many people have relatives that committed suicide, have sons, and I know I'm in close association with a lot of organizations that have their kids kill themselves, and it's always sad. I always reach out to people, and, I told them, I sympathize, I know how your son was feeling, your daughter was feeling, and tell them, because a lot of times there's a lot of self-blame in there. You tell them, it's not your fault. It's a disease, basically, that society doesn't want to talk about. And to those who attempted and weren't successful, I always try to encourage them to remain strong. I know we actually started one of the first teen support groups in anywhere near me was one of my missions, and I accomplished that, and we're bringing more support groups all over San Diego with the diocese. And so I'm in close association with the churches there and the teens that go to the support group that we have right now.
Yeah,
excellent.
And I know it's best because I know I just try to listen to them and ask them questions.
Luke, let me jump.
Try to be really loving.
Luke, let me jump in. You said something very important about the way society's changing, and you were very descriptive. That was very good. That's why teen suicide is through the roof. In fact, what you just said, there's a French sociologist. His name is Dr. Emil Durkheim, and he said that societies, he says that suicide rates in anomic societies are much higher than those in stable societies. What's an anomic society? He says that's a society where the social institutions break down, where morals change overnight. People feel confused, especially young people, about the direction society's taking. And young people, they're not even sure about what's right and what's wrong, because yesterday homosexuality was not allowed anywhere, and all of a sudden 20 states, by the stroke of a pen, now the people are calling it marriage. Abortion before 73 wasn't allowed. Now it's legal in all 50 states. These are called anomic societies. Dr. Emil Burkham says this weakens the morals, the standards, the faith in people when things just change from one night to another. In other words, this is what's called moral relativism gone wild. Would you agree with that study from Dr. Durkheim?
I would, especially growing up in this. We're just very confused. I mean, we're changing as it is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if we don't have a clear direction, like good, stable parents, good school, good spiritual life, then it's really hard to just keep a straight head and wonder what is going on around me.
Yeah, Luke, let me ask you a question. You mentioned you read the life of Fulton Sheen's book, The Life of Christ. I'm giving away to our listeners for just a great resource called Philosophy of Life. It's part of Life is Worth Living by Archbishop Sheen, because I know a lot of people don't know who he is still. And if they want to get that, they can get that free CD. They just pay the shipping by calling 877-526-2151. That's 877-526-2151. If you want to call in on the show, I didn't even give the number, but I want to take Mark up in San Jose, to call in. You can call in at 888-526-2151. That's 888-526-2151. We're going to run up to San Jose. Mark, you're on the air with Jesse and Terry and Luke Maxwell. Welcome to our show, Mark.
Thanks for having me. This is my first time, so I'm a little nervous.
Take your time, brother.
Blown away right now because I just caught your show right now. I was driving to the bank, and I'll try to make this short.
Take your time.
I've been recently going through a lot of turmoil right now in my life. I'm a cradle Catholic. My fiance just got baptized, and I sponsored someone through our RCIA process church.
Great.
And man, it's been really tough. And I was just, I was asking God for some guidance, and my father was a devout Catholic, and I was asking the Lord, and I was praying, and I asked my dad too for some guidance, and I was going through my closet, and I found one of my dad's old books, and it was The Life of Christ by Fulton Sheen. It had all his notes.
Wow.
And I tell you, I mean, even now I get choked up. God totally answered my prayer, and I didn't even know about Bishop Fulton Sheen. And to hear him, I've just been bottling him up. I've been listening on YouTube, and the things he said, some of them are like prophetic,
Absolutely.
It's incredible. But this man is incredible, and I heard you mention earlier about him possibly being up for canonization. I hope so.
Yeah, he's
making
keep going.
big impact in my life.
Wow, Mark, just so you know and all of us know, he's now the Venerable Fulton Sheen. The next step is Blessed, and that will be taking place most likely, I've heard, next summer in Illinois, so we all can go there. That's the word I got. Mark, I'm so glad you shared that story about Archbishop Sheen and the work that you're doing, and I would just encourage you to continue to soak up Fulton J. Sheen's material, because that's what got me going when I was 14 years old.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, I'm telling you, I can't get enough of him. And what's really cool though is I'm able to kind of, I lost my father when I was about 19 years old. So
Yes.
I'm able to now, I'm 39 years old now, to kind of get to know my dad again, because he has all his notes that he took.
That's beautiful.
So it's kind of like I'm peering back into what my father was thinking back, when he was younger.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. What a gift.
Mark, thank you very much for calling up. And I think the greatest contribution, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, that Fulton Sheen gave us in that book of his, Life is Worth Living, I think it's in chapter 3 or 4, where he basically says that everybody has to have a philosophy of life. That is the golden thread of that book. If we don't have a philosophy of life, in other words, our philosophies in paragraph 1721 of the Catechism, Fulton Sheen says, we are children of God, made to know, love, and serve God in this lifetime, to spend all eternity with Him in the next. If that's not burned in the Catholic soul, if that's not burned in the Catholic conscience, then we do fall into situational ethics, moral relativism, who's right, who's wrong. You fall into despair, doubt, hopelessness. We must be anchored in the rock-solid truth that we are children of God. Life is short, eternity is forever, meant to know, love, and serve God in this lifetime, and to spend with heaven, with God forever.
Luke Maxwell, 17 years old. We've been chatting with him about his attempted suicide and how he's reaching out to people to help them avoid the suicide situation. We just have another minute. Luke, can you tell us how people can contact you through your website, please?
Yes, my website is the letter U, can't, the letter B, erase.com. And I'm also on Facebook at Facebook/YouCan'tBeErased.com. I have a link on my website. I have resources. I have a letter that teens can print out to give to their parents to tell them that they're feeling depressed because I know talking is hard.
Sure.
I have the short video that I made with my brother of my story, and different interviews I've been on, and other resources I have up there.
Luke Maxwell, thanks so much for joining us. May God richly bless you. After the break, we have another...